Welcome to Doc NYC and the special Q&A for the film Francesco. I'm Tom Powers, the festival's artistic director. I'm pleased to have the film's director, Evgeny Afineevsky. He's joining me from Prague. Evgeny, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
So you've previously made films about Ukraine's democracy movement in Winter on Fire and the war in Syria. What led you to make this film about the Pope?
You know what? I guess these two movies connected indirectly to this project. After Syria, where for me, Syrian movie became a journey into the darker side of humanity. I was looking for the hope for humanity. I was looking to find love, light for the people, something that I can bring and inspire, not just darkness, which we saw a lot in the Syrian movie. And that's basically brought me to the idea to take some example of leadership, humble leadership, and through this leadership to go almost every subject matter of today's world, from climate change to refugee, migration, walls, borders, family separation, sexual abuse, women empowerment, gay and lesbian community, inequality, Rohingya refugees, Armenian genocide, interfaith. So almost every pandemic, which came later in this project, and then the violence and racial issues. So I guess for me, it was a journey through us, humanity, who falling apart, and him who is trying to show us the path to the future without mentioning the church, without being specifically related to the church.
So you grew up in Russia, a place where Catholicism doesn't have a strong hold. I wonder if you can talk about, the personal background that you bring to taking on the subject matter.
It's interesting because, first of all, I carry Jewish blood. And as you know, I was raised in Israel. I served Israeli military. Despite that, I went to Lebanon and Syria to do my Christ from Syria project. So it's interesting how almost every movie not related to me directly. I was born in Russia, and I went to do a Ukrainian revolution and became enemy to Russian state. I was raised in Israel, and I went to Syria and Lebanon, who are enemies to Israel. And you know what? I'm trying not to be biased to my characters or to my stories because I need my objectivity as a journalist. Growing in Russia, I do been growing as atheist because that's what was taught to our schools. And technically, I not was practicing anything until I became Israeli citizen, until I became a part of the Israel, and where I was introduced more to my culture, to my national culture. And I'm not a believer, but once a year I'm going to the synagogue for the Yom Kippur. And it's very important for me. This year I was fasting, so I'm respecting my culture. What I think brought me to this, it's to find something that can unite people. And seeing how France is trying to unite people in these horrible times for the entire planet, seeing that he practicing interface, which you and I were experiencing through Winter on Fire, where you saw how almost every religion were on Maidan, helping to the people without pushing people inside the church. I think altogether brought me to embrace Francis as the human leader and as a friend and as somebody whom I can take as the role model. And that's what brought me on this path to tell this story.
So you described why you wanted to make a film about Francis. How did you come to actually make it? It can't be that easy to gain access to the Vatican.
Oh, no. You know what? In 2018, earlier, I think it was February, I came to Vatican, and dear friend to you and dear friend to me, Alberto Barbera, introduced me to Monsignor Dario Vigano, who was the head of the communications of the Vatican. And Monsignor Dario Vigano embraced the project, but he said, I'm not promising anything with Pope Francis. You can go, you can do, I'm not promising the meeting. Then I went to Argentina, met his family, Pope Francis' family, friends, I learned a lot about him. And I sent him a present through new friends in Vatican. Then I sent him another present. Then I found my ways around Vatican. I learned that you do need to break laws sometimes and then to say sorry. That's how is my persistence in breaking certain rules. And also, you know what? Vatican have doors, windows, and chimney. So if you're not getting through the door, you're going through the window. And if you're not getting through the window, you're going through the chimney. And that was a long journey, not only to establish relationship with my character on non-protocol way, not the protocol Vatican way, but also to show to the Vatican that what I'm bringing is the quality storytelling. And I'm not trying to do it as the project for commercial use. I'm trying to do something, as we say, call for action, to be something that can ignite people to do some good things. And for me, I think all my movies been always activism, advocacy, and action. That's how I established relationship with Pope.
So a couple of years ago, there was another documentary by Wim Wenders about the Pope. What were you trying to do differently from other coverage of him?
You know what? I saw both documentaries. I saw mine in perspective to Wim's and vice versa. And what I learned first of all how my character responds to the camera. I learned how differently I can have approach compared to Wim. I not try to put Francis of Assisi in comparison to Pope. I try to go more, not about Francis in my movie. I try to go about us, humanity, who is a failure. And him as somebody who, through his lessons of life, through his actions, trying to show us a path, not through the church and religion, but through his actions of the humble human beings, period. And that was the approach, not to tell the story, not to narrate it, but allow him and the people whose hearts and minds he touched to narrate the story.
So once you got the initial access to him, how much time did you get to spend with him? And the man has a busy schedule. So how did you, manage that?
You know what? It was at the beginning. It was a small portions of time that I've been able just to talk without camera, because I needed to understand the mind of the person. I needed to understand the personality, what he likes. Despite that, I learned a lot from his friends, close friends in Argentina, and his family, with whom I'm in real close touch, with his nephew, the son of his sister from Argentina, Jose Ignacio Bergoglio. He's a dear friend. I learned a lot from him himself. For me, it was important to elaborate on a lot of subject matters that he cares. And then slowly we found portions here to film, portions another time. It was a lot of meetings. It was even certain moments during the pandemic that we managed to film with him remotely, because usually you do have a camera people in Rome that you get in and they can film him. And that was a challenge through the pandemic. But like I said, in overall, over 10 meetings, and some of them were 10, 15 minutes. Some of these meetings were 5 minutes. Some of the filming was for 2 hours. So it's always been different with him. When he have a time, I'm there.
Any leader of any organization has to navigate the difference between their personal views and the feelings within a larger organization. And within the Catholic Church, there are liberal wings and conservative wings. And I wonder, in all your observation of the Catholic Church, what you've witnessed in tensions between those wings as Pope Francis, makes pronouncements that some people would consider, more liberal than the Catholic Church has been in the past.
You know what? In a conversation that we had with him, he considers himself conservative, which is very interesting. But in the same time, the two sides of the church which exist, the conservatives considering Benedict more conservative as a Pope, whom you've seen in our movie, who actually, for the first time in the camera, embracing Francis for everything what he's doing, and you can see it in the movie. And I think that's the unique thing that never happened in 800 years, having two live popes and connected to each other and embracing each other. And Francis, he's more open, he's more willing to learn, he's more willing to acknowledge his mistakes and failures. He still considered himself a very conservative, despite people thinking he is the progressive side of the church. Now, there is a tensions, but you know what? Last year, I witnessed something interesting in Vatican. Pope Francis invited people from Sudan, Sudanese opposition leaders, to his place, and he literally said to them, please, you want to fight behind the closed doors, but in front of the people, hold the hands and be fathers of the nation. So for me, it was important to acknowledge that at the end of the day, church needs to be united, people need to be united. Our leaders need to show us unity and not the division how we see in it. So yes, I witnessed certain things in the church, but in overall, Francis trying to unite the church. Francis is open to criticism from all sides. He is not trying to shut it down like our leader. For example, every criticism for him, it's the fake news. No, Pope Francis is open to any critiques. For the first time in history, I think, I never had any criticism or anything from Vatican where they try to object something or say what to do. I was having a really green light to do anything and tell the story that I want to tell, which was fascinating because usually Vatican trying to kind of control the narratives or trying to control the story. I had a free kind of spirit because Pope Francis said, listen, you're telling your story, not my story. You're telling how you seeing this, and you are not Catholic, so tell it how you feel, what your heart tells you. So that's how it's happened.
Mm-hmm. And so you and I are speaking in mid-October. The film is going to have its world premiere on October 21st in Rome. Has people from the Vatican seen the film yet?
Yes, and even Pope. Actually, I was in Rome in August 31st, and before leaving back to United States, Pope Francis asked me to stop by, and I spent like 40 minutes with him, showing him parts of the movie. And that's the first time in history that Pope was watching any kind of movie. Because from 1978, Pope Francis, or before it was Cardinal Bergoglio, never saw any TV, any movies. Even his favorite football, he's not watching. Usually Swiss guards coming and giving him the scores. So Pope Francis, for the first time, observed the parts of the movie when I was showing it to him, and he loved it. He sent it to me a beautiful letter after that, and he appreciated all hard work and all my patience for all these 3 years that the project literally was been created. But Vatican itself, the head of the communications, the Dicastery of Communications of Vatican saw it. The head of the Order of Jesuits saw it. Many people from inside of Vatican saw the movie after it's been completed, and they loved it. They appreciate the hard work.
What's a favorite scene of yours in the film? You may know things that about what it took to pull off a scene that we wouldn't know watching. When you watch it, what's a scene that you really take satisfaction out of?
The scene that is in the movie right now, is scene that is out of the movie.
Well, a scene that's, let's say, a scene that's in the movie, one that our audience has seen.
Oh, almost every scene in the movie is something that I cherish and love. I'm trying to think.
Well, if that's
I know the scene that is I'm missing right now. There is two scenes that is not in the movie. One that I filmed inside Santa Marta with him, and then this scene was filmed. I completed this filming in prison in Argentina. I was in a prison because Pope hosted prisoners from Argentina in Santa Marta, and he inspired them, and that was really emotional, beautiful thing. This scene is not there, and it's a story about certain program that they implemented in the prisons of Argentina, and right now it's worldwide, how to educate people, and when they're getting out of the prison, they have already a profession and they're different people, and it's very emotional. And then another scene which is very emotional is about the child. You probably saw it in the previous cut, where the child was crying on his shoulder, and Pope comforted him. So I think that's very, very emotional scene for me. And talking about the movie itself, I will tell you what is emotional for me. The sexual abuse segments, all three segments of sexual abuse, they're very important and emotional for me. I have a true friend whom you know, Lisa Tabak, who was my publicist. And Lisa in 2017 had a lunch with me before the Christmas. And Lisa said, Evgeny, you're going to Vatican, you're going to do this movie. You need to promise me that you will tell the story of the victims of sexual abuse and you will show it as it is, how it happened. Because for Lisa, who was behind the Spotlight movie, it was really touchy and important subject. And Lisa made me to tell this story and I kept my promise. So that's what is important.
So for my last question, what are you hoping that people will take away from the film?
I guess every person will find something different in this movie. For these days, where specifically America is suffering with the government that is creating more and more drastic collapse for our country, I think, first of all, it will be awakening of the Catholics and Christians, who is right now led by the fake news, by misleading media, by the ads that our government's creating. I don't want to politicize this, but this everyday news coming out of United States, where two Christian Catholic justices went against gay and lesbian community under the premises of the religion, where we see that children were under the premises of religion separated with the families on a Mexican-American border. I think every subject that we're trying to tackle in the movie will help to people, to see the reality, which I try to bring in this movie, and learn what is the true faith, what is the true truth behind being Catholic, being a Christian. And at the end of the day, I hope that America, and I don't want to be politicizing it right now, will make a change, because that's what we need. It's actually the last sentence of Pope Francis, because we need a change that will unite us all. Last sentence of my movie.
Evgeny, I should clarify, you were referring to our country. You live in America now. I had said at the beginning that you're joining us from Prague, but you're visiting. So when you talk about our country, you're talking about the United States.
Yes, but Prague, that's where I produced the movie. Because for me, traveling to every country which you saw in the movie, and also my Syrian movie, I was producing here from Barandov Studio in Prague. So that's where I am right now. I arrived last Friday to Prague, actually. And it's interesting how in COVID times, filmmakers still able to travel with American passport. And I did already a couple of travel. I was traveling in July, I was traveling in August, I was traveling in September, and right now, so.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your film and for taking time with us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for everything.